Good evening, everyone, and I want to tell you how much we all appreciate the turnout, people who are here to hear about the next presentation here on Route 82. Tonight we have representatives of the Department of Transportation. Mr. Scott Bushy is here to start things off. They have about a 30-minute presentation, and then we will follow up with any questions from council. Hopefully we can provide for an opportunity for members of the audience, particularly if you are someone who owns property in this corridor. I'd like to give you that opportunity as well. Okay, Scott, please.
Hi, can everybody hear me okay? Okay. Scott Bushy from Connecticut DOT. I'm project manager for the roundabout corridor on Route 82. With me today I have Matt Vale. He's our principal engineer for the highway design unit. Jordan Pike, project engineer. Jessica Darling, project designer. And I also have a special guest with us tonight, Mr. Mark Lenthers from Kimberly Horn Consulting Engineers. Mark is a national expert on roundabouts and roundabout corridors, and he'll be following my presentation. Last time we were here is about 2 years ago, so looking to give you guys an update on what's been happening in the last 2 years and status of the project and just a little more information. Getting things rolling. Why we're here. Just a short video, give you a quick indication of what we're looking at from DOT as far as operation and safety problems that bring our attention to this corridor. So this is the driveway in front of ShopRite. If you notice, there was a lot of time, there was no traffic moving. Now you have someone here that wants to make a left turn into the driveway. Some of these cars behind them, they're trapped. They're through vehicles and they're stuck behind someone who wants to make a left turn. At this point, the capacity on the corridor is really failing. All these vehicles are trying to now change into another lane. That lends itself to sideswipe type crashes. There's one car wanting to make a left, has got traffic backed up as far as you can see. With the round.
And the guy just ran the red light at the end of it.
How's this? Okay. With the roundabout corridor, you won't have those problems. Again, we've got a time when nobody's moving. Traffic's kind of stopped. You don't have dead time with roundabout corridors. Somebody's moving all the time. Again, we have a vehicle, got their left turn signal on. Through vehicles behind them, they're trapped, they can't go. Sometimes people tend to change lanes, sideswipe crashes can occur. Now traffic's backing up all the way past the crest of the hill as long as you can see, just because that one vehicle wanted to make a left turn. With roundabouts, all the turns are right turns. You don't have any left turning vehicles, you're not crossing lanes to get in and out of driveways. Now looking at pedestrians. You have some people at the bus shelter. Keep an eye on them, interested in crossing. She's coming out behind a parked car, crossing 4 lanes of traffic. The guy in the truck didn't see her, another guy in the other lane didn't see her. We won't have that with a roundabout. Any of the pedestrian crossings with a roundabout are going to have a raised median, a splitter aisle in the middle. That will get the pedestrian out of the lane of traffic. So when they're standing there and they're ready to cross, they're going to be visible. And they only have to cross 2 lanes at a time in this section, not 4 lanes of traffic. Moving on. Route 82, locally known as Crash Alley. Our crash studies have shown 117 crashes annually with 26 injuries per year. That has a cost associated with it. It has a cost associated with emergency response times from your local ambulance and fire department to come out and help people. It has a cost associated with all of our insurance rates because the insurance companies are paying out hospitalization, especially with uninsured drivers. And we have programs through Federal Highway that allow us to put a dollar value on that. $4.2 million annually associated with these crashes. 7 locations on this corridor are on the high crash location list that DOT maintains. About 40% of the total crashes occur at unsignalized intersections. These are all the driveways. Route 82 has a lot of curb cuts. All these little circles, these are all driveways along Route 82, and they're opportunities for people to make a left in where they're crossing 2 lanes of traffic to get in, or they're making a left out. You actually have to have a gap in 3 lanes of traffic to make a left out of any of these driveways. At times when Route 82 is busy, that becomes very difficult. People become impatient, they take short gaps, and it leads to crashes. People make mistakes. You have somebody sitting in the through lane for a long time with their blinker on, they want to make a left. That exposes them to potential for rear-end crashes by speed differential with other vehicles coming up from behind. You don't have that with a roundabout. All the turns will be right into the driveways with the raised median, and all the turns at the intersection are right turns with the roundabout. This is a typical driveway along the corridor. This happens to be Bank of America, but it could be any driveway along the corridor, a commercial business. 5-year period, we've got 19 crashes with 5 injuries, all related to people making a left turn out of the driveway. And that's not even looking at driveways where you could make a turn in and out at the same driveway. This is just an exit-only driveway, so it's pretty significant. Looking at one of the major intersections on the corridor, this is Route 82 at New London Turnpike, crash study. We've got 66 crashes in a 5-year period. That's pretty significant. Looking at the crash patterns that we have, we've got 17 rear-end crashes going eastbound, 11 rear-end crashes going westbound, 8 rear-end crashes going northbound, 9 rear-end crashes going southbound, and a number of angle crashes within the middle of the intersection. So with a roundabout, these types of crashes they're not eliminated, but they're much, much less intense, much, much less in number. One of the previous concepts to fix this corridor, address safety, was to add a 2-way left turn lane. Years ago, that was the only tool we had in our toolbox. New England wasn't really in the business of roundabouts. That came about later. But at that time, we had thought, well, maybe that's a viable solution. It was $34 million to put in the 2-way left turn lane. And that would get vehicles out of the through lane and into a safe haven if they want to turn into one of the driveways. But with that, if you're at a driveway and you want to make a left turn, now you've got to cross 2 lanes of traffic going one way, across the 2-way left turn lane, and then have a gap of traffic in the other direction to execute your turn. So that's even more lanes you have to cross than what you currently have, which are already causing problems. So we know that's not a real good safety solution for the corridor. What's really needed is access management. And in the planning toolbox, transportation safety toolbox, access management is kind of a word that we use when we're looking at things like raised medians, driveway consolidation, things like that. Route 82 really needs a raised median, and that will prevent left turns in and out of the driveways and make all the turns happen at the traffic signals. Turns in and out of the driveway with a raised median will be right in, right out. You're only looking for a gap in traffic in one direction. You're not crossing a number of lanes to execute your turn. Much easier, much safer. This concept sketch kind of shows what it would look like with raised median and traffic signals. If you have a raised median and traffic signals, you got to make a U-turn at the traffic signal. In order to make a U-turn at a traffic signal, you need a huge amount of real estate. 78 feet is shown here, and this kind of shows the amount of widening that would be needed and business impact to make that happen. And this U-turn capability would only work for a passenger car. Your corridor is very commercialized. There's a lot of delivery vehicles, whether it's a box truck or a tractor trailer or something in that neighborhood, it wouldn't be able to make that U-turn. In order to make that U-turn for the larger vehicles, you'd have to do something like a jug handle, come around, like you see a lot of those in Massachusetts. And it's really not a viable option for that corridor. It's too much property impact, and it's really not going to address safety. So what's really needed are roundabouts at the existing signalized intersections at the end of your raised medians, and the roundabouts will address the U-turns needed at the intersections to allow traffic to go past one driveway they're interested, make a U-turn at the roundabout, and go back and execute a right turn into the driveway. Installation of roundabouts would address about 60% of the crash problem that we have along the corridor, which occurs at the signalized intersections. Data where roundabouts have been previously installed for capacity safety operations, we've studied and shown a 78% reduction in severe crashes after the installation of a roundabout and a 48% reduction in injury crashes after the reduction of after construction of the roundabout. With the raised median, which I said 40% of the crashes were occurring at commercial driveways, unsignalized intersections, driveways. Studies have shown where corridors have had a raised median installed, it's reduced turning crashes by 78%, and it's reduced injuries by 95%. And the injury reduction is kind of obvious. That's where you don't have a vehicle crossing 2 or 3 lanes to get into their desired lane of traffic, and you have these side swipe type crashes occurring with a high speed differential. That's when people tend to get hurt. So this was a concept plan shown 4 years ago with the city, 5 years ago now. The one we're currently working on is still similar. Our status, we're probably about 20% into the design process. We've got a long ways to go. We prepared this map. Sure. This is not the current plan. This is what was shown 5 years ago. I prepared this map just to give you an idea of everyone that we've been speaking with over the past 2 years or so. And I mentioned we're only in the 20% process on the design, and a lot of that's because we've been doing listening sessions. DOT's been going out, we've been meeting with property owners and business owners. We've been talking about parking lots. We've been talking about driveways, traffic circulation around businesses, and how best we can design the corridor to meet the needs of that particular business. And we haven't got to everybody yet, but we made a pretty significant effort so far to talk to as many as we can, and we still have a lot of work to go through to get to everyone else. But we're planning on it. But everyone shown on this plan, we've had meetings with on site at their property, including the 2 fire departments and the ambulance service, who are very supportive of the roundabout project. Here's a list of everyone we've been meeting with, calling these listening sessions. DOT's gone in, we said we have this corridor plan, it involves roundabouts, this is how it affects your particular property. What are your concerns? How do you use this parking over here? How does your traffic circulate around? How do your deliveries come in and access your property? We need to know these things to design the project. It's a lot of work and a lot of time. So our current concept plan and the corridor project, we're removing 7 traffic signals and replacing it with 6 roundabouts. It's split into 2 phases, 3 roundabouts in each phase. Phase 1 starts down at Asylum, Route 82, extends west, then phase 2 picks up, extending west. Phase 1, we're looking at construction in 2024. As I mentioned, we've got a long ways to go, a lot of businesses to speak with, a lot of property owners, a lot of utility coordination, still a lot more design effort. We're trying to put some time in and do this right. Not looking to slap plans together and just throw it out to bid. And this kind of shows a concept rendering of what your community could look like, one of the roundabouts. This is just an idea. It wasn't coordinated with the city. You can't put any of this on the city. The city certainly didn't agree to this. I just threw this in the presentation just to show the change from a 4-lane roadway to a roundabout. You could have some plantings and aesthetic characters to it. Here's a typical cross-section of what the corridor could look like. Today, there's 4 lanes of traffic, small buffer, sidewalk. Between the roundabouts, we're going to have a raised median. The raised median would be a 4-inch mountable curb. Most areas would be a concrete surface. There may be isolated street trees to help with traffic calming. Isolated, not many. A 5-foot shoulder to accommodate bicyclists, much better. The corridor has a pretty heavy bicycle community. Then a buffer and a sidewalk on each side. The council had interest in significant property impacts along the corridor. And as I mentioned, we're still only in the 20% stage. I'm not going to say this is a final design by any means. We've got a long ways to go. We're still working on geometry. But at the moment, at a preliminary look, these are the significant property impacts. And that's something we could discuss further at a roundtable if you're interested. At this time, I'm going to pass the presentation over to Mark Lenthers. But since the last council meeting, we've met with emergency services, both fire departments, ambulance service, pretty supportive of the project. We've been looking at how to address construction impacts with the project. We've been looking at how to phase the project. I don't have the details of that yet. We've got a lot longer to go in the design process, but we're looking at what might be considered for night work. Of the sections that we're doing 3 roundabouts at a time, we're not going to tear up everything and have 3 roundabouts under construction where traffic is significantly impacted for that entire stretch. We'll try to work on isolated locations and then keep moving on to minimize impacts to traffic. We've been through the slides I showed you with the business coordination, meeting with a lot of businesses. And if I didn't get to you yet, please have patience. We will get to you. And we've been also looking at other successful roundabout corridors. Now, Mark Lenthers, a little bit about DOT's involvement with Mark. The last time we were out here at a council meeting, I had a lot of questions about what experience DOT has in design with roundabout corridors, and I told you we didn't have any. We've designed a number of single roundabouts at isolated locations, but not in a corridor. And of the 7 locations that we've designed, they've all been a huge success as far as improving safety significantly and improving capacity substantially. In Connecticut, we don't have roundabout corridors, but Mark Lenthers with Kimberly Horn, he's one of the national experts. We brought him out to do a review on our design and assist us with lane arrangements, geometry, accommodation of pedestrians, and his wealth of knowledge that he can add to a review of our design before we take it to the 30% level. And at this point, I'm going to introduce Mr. Mark Lenthers.
Thanks, Scott. I think you can hear me. Sound good? Yeah, so as Scott was saying, my role has been really as a sounding board for the engineering aspects of the roundabout planning. It's obviously been going on for several years, and they're reaching a point where some of the tougher questions are being asked. Can roundabouts do more than alternate the flow of traffic? You know, can they actually serve a purpose higher than just processing volume of traffic? Can they improve pedestrian wayfinding? Can they actually improve business opportunities? You know, can they foster placemaking? This idea that, you know, the front door gateway to your community looks a little more attractive than it does today. You know, what's the potential for that using roundabouts? I'm going to show you some studies, and I think we've reached the tipping point. Some of the studies I'm going to show you are 10 years old. And that's because, you know, when we were studying the business impacts and benefits of roundabouts, you know, for about the first 10 years, we collected tax data, we talked to communities, I monitored projects that were mine, roundabout projects I've probably done, I've lost count, over 500 roundabouts in maybe 20 or 30 corridors around the country. I'm an on-call consultant for several DOTs, Georgia, Colorado, parts of Ohio, Wisconsin, Maine. Done a little bit of work with these folks, but you know, part of my job is to collect that experience nationally and provide support to communities and also Department of Transportation that wants to explore the potential benefits of roundabouts. So I think it's safe to say we've reached the tipping point because we've been looking for evidence that roundabouts are impacting business negatively, and we're not finding it. You know, that's kind of the null hypothesis in a scientific sense. You know, we're looking for the problem, and if we don't find it, that must mean things are good. Well, it's better than that. We're finding good news and better news the more often we see this being done. So this has been done in other communities quite successfully, but of course it's new to you. If you explore the possibility of using roundabouts in a business sense, you know, that's brand new. You haven't done that before. How can a transportation facility, you know, improve business opportunities? One of the things that Scott talked about was dividing the roadway. You know, my first reaction from being in a family business, retail for a number of years as a young man was, well, I lose exposure. So how would the roundabout change that? And it does through the use of U-turns. Safe U-turns, not U-turns against high-speed traffic, but safe U-turns. So I'm going to show you some case studies that highlight some of these things, and it's all a good news story. So I'll give you the punchline first, that business was suffering in the corridors that we looked at. And these are just a sampling of some of them from around the country. Businesses were suffering. There were crashes affecting viability. You know, you can go down the list and look, well, yeah, that's happening in our community, and yes, that's happening, and that's a problem in our community, and we'd like to see improved business opportunities and access. We don't want to lose good access and all that sort of thing. So with that, we'll go into a few corridors. So this was the first roundabout corridor in North America. It happened to be in the Vail Valley, a very high touristed area, so you'd think unfamiliar drivers. Vail had its success with 2 interchange roundabout projects. Avon, as a community, is about 8 miles from Vail, observed that success. Now, Vail has since redeveloped a couple of times and spent over $1 billion in new development because of the roundabouts provided interchange capacity. Avon saw that in 1995, 96 and said, we want that. So they actually passed a referendum, tax incremental financing, and funded the roundabouts to have them constructed almost immediately. It was a fast-track project. Since then, Avon's invested about $500 million in development expansion. And we have some of the tax data to show that. So, but first a little video clip if we can see how we get this going here. So you'll see traffic flowing in a roundabout corridor is all generally flowing at about the same speed. So the predictability of corridors with roundabouts is quite good. When traffic flows about the same speed, if you're in a driveway, you can predict how easy it is to get out because you don't have someone going fast, someone going slow, someone partially stopped, someone queuing, buses get through, there's pedestrians crossing in behind. Where's my laser? There's my laser. Pedestrians crossing in behind here. In a moment, you'll see some pedestrians crossing in here. There goes someone across there. And there's our bus without any stops working through the corridor. And things generally look fairly calm. In a moment, the video is going to speed up just to show you how much traffic, there goes the pedestrians, just to show you how much traffic it processes. So if this were traffic signals, which these intersections were, you would see a start-stop motion. Things would go and then stop, and then go and then stop. You wouldn't see this continuous flow of traffic. Somewhat tiring if you watched it for any length of time. But the impression that you get is that there's less delay, the air quality is probably better, the fuel consumption is lower, the safety is better because speeds are predictable, and speeds in conflict points between drivers, in conflict points between drivers in these areas of the entry points and exit points, speeds are low in the range of 20 to 25 miles per hour. So that's been a good news story. And so the placemaking afforded by the use of roundabouts in this area, these are bronze statues of horses with plantings, and this is a hotel. There's restaurants and banks around the intersection, our large restaurant and office complex there, all of which needed access, all of which had pedestrian interests. The business owners didn't change, they simply invested more in what they already had to make it thrive. And that's the pattern that we've seen around the country. Put something on hold here. Okay, try that. There we go. So in some before and after studies, we want to be evidence-based. 13 roundabouts eventually developed in the Vail Valley, the 5 in Avon, several more on the outskirts. and then the ones in Vale. And they all had collision reductions except one roundabout, which had about the same property damage crashes. They had reduced bicycle and pedestrian crashes, and of course the reduction in the severity of crashes was impressive. So the town of Avon several years ago had this downtown master plan and these larger development areas with large blocks. They were investing, because the roundabout corridor was essentially the spine of the community, provided access from I-70 in and out of Denver and Vales to the east of Avon, and Beaver Creek, where former President Ford had a property. So there's some expensive real estate there, and they've since achieved a very high-end look for the corridor and the areas around. So this is a power center, a little different use of roundabouts and corridors, but since this photo's been taken, it's all filled in. You could look in Google Maps and you'd see other buildings, Lowe's and Walmart, and then again, this is US 6 that used to go all the way to Denver, and I-70 replaced it. So very high-end yield on retail of a power center. So some of the revenue in the early years when we were collecting this information showed just before the recession, we saw, a steady increase from the time the roundabouts were built in '97, just things continuing to increase, a slight fall off in the financial crisis period of time. But I went back and collected some more data just recently, and we saw a 20% increase in sales tax revenue, which means businesses are doing well in the area. So, and then some of the additional development, the roundabout is anchored here on a spine, and then just to the west of that, there's a small lake here. They're looking at a whole main central area. These are all recreation centers, some municipal buildings, but some hotels as well. So let me back that one up. In Carmel, Indiana, for a while it was being called Roundabout Mecca. Over about a 7 or 10 year period, Carmel built about 75, 80 roundabouts. And a lot of them were at major crossroads. A lot of them helped with development corridors. Many local businesses were drawn to the area with roundabouts, and they used them at hospitals, shopping centers incorporated them. They were essentially using them anywhere they had potential congestion or safety issues. And when the Chamber of Commerce spoke up and said businesses don't just want to be where people are, they want to be where customers are and avoid traffic jams, where traffic can move smoothly, roundabouts provide that excellent opportunity and safe, environmentally friendly roundabouts. So this is a 10-year-old quote, and I don't think they would retract it since they were already 10 years into the program and having that kind of success. This is one that, again, pushing a little bit to the west. If you know Sedona and Oak Creek in Arizona, northern Arizona, south of Flagstaff, it's a kind of an artsy community, very different feel. But again, roundabouts anchored a lot of the development that was suffering from the problems with congestion in the vicinity of access points where driveways couldn't get on and off of SR 89 and SR 179, two state roads, a large Hyatt hotel, US Post Office, a Burger King, and some other businesses, and some small retail, a lot of it family-owned type business. And if I get my little video, whoops, going here, have to. So you see that roughly the same amount of traffic on the little video inset here is replacing what's there today. So the speeds past this development was in the range of 45 miles per hour. So gaining access anywhere near the traffic signal was a problem. And the gas station, they were all hampered by access and queues. And you can see in the after condition, the fluid flow of traffic at low speeds with comfortable pedestrian crossings. And this is a lot of this is tourist traffic, all throughout the year. Sedona is a very attractive community to visit. There's a lot of cultural and natural resources. And so the replacement of those two main intersections has fostered, intensification of some of the development and just improvement of some of the facades, the buildings. They've invested more in these businesses along the corridor. And you can see compared to the previous photo, there's almost no congestion. These days, we're hearing that they think they might need to add a right turn. So there's some issues with congestion now. These were built in 2008, 2009, and 10 or 11 years since, they're starting to see some congestion. But they purposely went for the single lane roundabout options with all 11 roundabouts from top to bottom through the two communities. They didn't want a through fare. They wanted this to be a low-speed corridor that fostered, making it a destination more than a throughput. This one is something that's just beginning down in Florida. We were crisscrossing the country. There was a gentleman named Rod Warner that didn't belong to the Chamber of Commerce, wasn't on council, and Rod set out to essentially oppose Florida DOT in its practice of buying a lot of right-of-way and building extremely wide roadways. And on a section of US 41, which is Tamiami Trail, it goes all the way to Green Bay, the section south of Sarasota goes down to Venice. In fact, they did widen it. So, those of us watching what was happening with this corridor into the south in Venice observed that, Rod lost the battle but won the war, because Billy Hadaway, who's the Secretary of Transportation there in that region, they turned it around and said, we're not going to widen US 41. In fact, they're going to add bike lanes and put sections of it on a diet and build essentially a string of pearls. Several of these are already under construction, and they're anchoring very large, cultural opportunities. There's the Opera House, there's the access to the causeway. If anyone has traveled down here, it's a very attractive area, and they want to move traffic more fluidly and have pedestrian access, because this whole waterfront is one big, trails and access. So moving along. Let's see. Yeah, give me a seat that one. I might have frozen it up here. There we go. So a little video clip. So just in town, off of this US 41, is a 5-leg intersection, and it was converted from a five-way stop controlled intersection to this. And what you don't see so much is, the before condition. There were no cafes. There was not a walkable environment. It was not placemaking. Now it's a veterans circle. They have the Memorial Day parade that surrounds the circle. So, these are intended to give you sort of a vision of the kind of things that roundabouts can do besides just alternating the flow of traffic efficiently. Let's see if we can go ahead one more. Again? Yep. Okay. Yeah, so there's the before and after. So you can see with traffic signal controls, almost a sterile environment, very difficult for pedestrians, very inefficient in terms of 5 legs and controlling traffic. Go ahead. And again, another comparison, you can see the sea of pavement, the longer pedestrian crosswalks, and the difficulty of having these access points kind of stranded here with pedestrians and strollers and kids and bikes. And then the after condition, you can see with the short pedestrian crosswalk, more placemaking, more vegetation, just a more attractive area. Very serviceable design as well for drainage and aesthetics. Okay. On to the northeast now, another section of Highway 41 that goes all the way to Green Bay, Wisconsin. I lived there for 10 years before moving to Atlanta 2 years ago and worked on this corridor project. Again, businesses that were suffering, just post-recession, 2009, 2010. The city really wanted to give this area an injection of investment in transportation. And so all of these accesses were hampered by congestion at this main intersection. So there's an anchor food store, some ancillary commercial, fast food, gas stations, another anchor, shopping centers, and all of this was falling into disrepair. So with the introduction of, 4 roundabouts in the area, access was improved. So the U-turn opportunity, which I started out talking about, was really a bonus for some of these developments, because they were in the area of the influence of the intersection. Access was difficult. And providing the U-turns and providing slow-speed traffic past their front door made it much more attractive for commercial use. And at the bottom it says $13 million in commercial retail renewal. That was all invested on the part of these owners. These landowners and business owners injected that kind of funding into their businesses and gave the area a facelift after the roundabouts were built. This is a common thing we see. We often hear from gas station franchise, they're looking for the next roundabout intersection so they can locate right next to it. They get lower speed traffic, the traffic goes around, they can see the development from the center of the intersection instead of focusing on signal heads and that kind of thing. So we, again, the before and after, you see, large, long pedestrian crosswalks, high-speed traffic through an intersection, and more placemaking and low-speed traffic, space for trucks, and access to retail. Thank you. Oh, there we go. There's a piece of video. Again, so a little bit of queuing coming from the shopping center, but that's a good sign. These were empty lots before. And now, because the traffic moves quite smoothly and fluidly, all this traffic will clear and goes through these other intersections with these main driveways. That traffic can now make the U-turns to go back the other way. So they've created great opportunities for some of that business. Okay. And then that one more. So these were some of the existing access points that were improved with the use of U-turns. So the driver coming here that wants to make a left turn into this can't because of the break, there's no break in the median. They make the U-turn for the roundabout, and now they can access this development. Similar between these two, a pair, they can come out and make the U-turns from either direction. And now so we start to see intensification, and these businesses are starting to get the exposure they didn't previously have because of the U-turns and the median access. So the before and after studies, Kansas State University did a survey of businesses, and the conclusions were that based on widely accepted assumption that if business areas have good vehicle access and safe access, traffic should flow and prosper and grow, and conversely, businesses that don't have good access and good traffic flow will not thrive, and that stands to reason. So we're back to where we were with Scott's presentation, 2 phases of a project. You see the medians dividing the roadway with the U-turns opportunities at the roundabouts, a uniform flow of traffic, a slower movement of traffic in terms of speed. So it's safer if there's going to be conflicts with bicycles, pedestrians, and vehicles. They're reconciled through the use of roundabouts that help slow traffic down. I think we're pretty much at the point of questions.
Questions from the council? Sure.
Go ahead.
I have a few. First, I think you kind of buzzed through one of the slides there pretty quickly, and I had particular concern as to the impact of some of the businesses in that area from the actual building, like land you would need to take advantage of that would impact those businesses, if you know the slide I'm referring to. So, but anyway, what I was thinking in terms is I know you're only at the 20% stage, but obviously you realize that these particular businesses are going to be impacted.
Yep.
What kind of impact are they going to be looking at? I mean, are they going to have to relocate or?
Yes.
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 Bottom
So
line.
the ones that I had shown on this plan, and we're not positive on all of these yet. We still have a long ways to go, but showing you where we're at, these would be businesses that would need to be relocated. And we have a process through our right-of-way office to work with that business owner to help them find a new site to go. We have financing to help them move. And then after the project is constructed, DOT doesn't want to own this property. It's going to go for sale. And that will allow opportunities for new businesses to be developed.
All right. The other thing, when you actually get to construction, the construction phase, what kind of impacts are we looking at for some of the other businesses? I think that's a concern of a lot of them, that there's going to be a significant problem during this project, and it's obviously an extended project.
Problem as far as work on their property, or problem as far as traffic being able to access?
Traffic being able to access the property.
So what I had suggested is we've got 6 roundabouts going in. It's broken up into 2 phases. They're 2 years apart. We're going to start on the eastern section first. And we'll put out phasing plans to bid that'll show we're not going to rip up this whole thing and be interfering with this whole section of traffic at one time. We'll phase this so we try to work on an isolated location one day, then another day move on to another spot. That way traffic through the whole corridor isn't seeing work activity after activity after activity with multiple operations going on. So we'll try to phase this as best we can to be sensitive to that. The last time we were here, the council had suggested that we consider use of night work as much as possible. We have been considering that, and we will as much as possible. The thing we have to be careful with is a lot of residents in the area that are pretty close, and the night work is loud, and there's only so much they can take, or they're not gonna be able to sleep. So night work that seems pretty reasonable would be short duration tasks, things that aren't gonna go on for weeks at a time. Paving, absolutely, something we'd look to do at night. Maybe pouring of concrete, that's a short operation, a few hours, maybe a one-night thing, then the next day we get on to something else. But once we have more detailed plans, those operations can be better identified. But it's certainly, this entire corridor doesn't lend itself to night work. It would be too noisy.
Warm one?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just one quick one, and I'm gonna go over to other council members. Diversion of traffic. Are you looking at diverting traffic through the project or around it? There are parallel roads that run on both sides of this corridor. What have you looked at, and if so, how you notify those neighborhoods if in fact that has to take place, even on a one trial basis, depending on the extent of what that large work is?
At the moment, we're looking to maintain traffic through the corridor while we're working.
Okay.
So no official diversions of traffic. No signed detours, nothing like that.
All right, thank you. Other members? Yes, Alderwoman Ella Miles, please.
I just have a question, because I actually live on one of those parallel streets off of 82. And a lot of folks use my street as a cut-through to get to New London Turnpike, because they don't want to deal with the traffic lights and all of that. So that tends to be an issue. You know, it's a low-speed street. People go flying down there like it's a freeway. And my only concern is, what's the long-term impact of people not wanting to deal with the reduced speeds, not wanting to deal with the roundabouts, and then continuing to use those side streets as the cut-through?
Okay. We wouldn't be proposing the project if we didn't feel 100% confident this was going to be a much better solution than what's there now. Traffic is going to advance much quicker. When I showed the video at the beginning of the presentation, there was a lot of dead time. Traffic wasn't moving, you're just looking at pavement, cars are all stopped at the traffic signal. If you watch the videos that Mark presented, cars are moving in all different directions all the time. Somebody's moving, you don't have as much delay. So what we anticipate is gonna happen, although speeds through the corridor are gonna be slower, the roundabouts are designed from the 20 to 25 mile an hour range to go through. You're not gonna have traffic signals to stop at and sit and wait and wait and wait. So the progression time through the corridor from west to east is gonna be faster than it is today. You're not gonna have all these lights to sit at, waiting for your turn to go. So the progression time, although your overall travel time will be less, it's gonna be steady. So you're gonna get from one end to the other much quicker than you do now. You don't have the lights to stop at. I don't think there would be any reason for someone to feel this is causing delay. It's probably gonna take them more time to exit the main roadway, make a turn up to your street, and then go down through the neighborhood as a cut-through. If they're not, because this is gonna be a much more efficient and a much more safer route when we're done.
Other members? Alderwoman Gould?
Okay, so you have a perfect lead into my next question. You just said cars are moving constantly and in all different directions, right?
Yes.
So tell me how a person gets across the street. If the cars are constantly moving and they're going in every different direction, how do you get across the street?
I'll explain it, and then we have a video we can show as well. I'm gonna use this one as an example. So the roundabouts have crosswalks on all legs. We have a crosswalk here and a crosswalk here. The crosswalk is not located in front of the stop bar like it is now at the existing traffic signals. where you have a car there, they're stopped, the crosswalk's there, but the person in the car is looking to their left, they're looking to their right, they're watching the traffic signal, and they're at the same time trying to pay attention if someone stepped off the curb and wants to cross. These crosswalks with roundabouts are safer. They're positioned 25 feet back, so they're not where the car is trying to make a decision if they have a safe point to yield. It's the car behind them that they're going to cross. The crossing point for this section that's under a road diet, because it's currently 4 lanes of traffic that have to be crossed, this section of roadway is going to be reduced to 2 lanes. And we're able to do that because the intersections are going to be much, much more efficient at moving traffic. Well, today, instead of crossing 4 lanes to get across, you're only going to have to cross 1 lane. So you watch for a gap at this direction. You stand on the curb, look to your left. You only have to look in one direction. Look to your left. When you get a gap, you go to the middle. The middle, there's an island. You stand in the island. You look to your right, wait for a gap to the right, and you go across the other lane. Today, when someone crosses, they've got 4 lanes of traffic to cross. They're looking to their left, and they're looking to their right for a gap at the same time. So with a roundabout, the distance is much shorter, and you only have to look in one direction at a time to cross. To the western end of the project, where we still have 4 lanes, I noticed today when I was coming in, this section by New London Turnpike, this crossing actually has 6 lanes. There's 4 lanes in the eastbound direction across, and then 2 lanes going westbound. That's going to be reduced from 6 lanes down to 4 lanes. So the actual crossing width is going to be much, much less. So you stand on this curb, look to your left, wait for a gap in traffic, cross these 2 lanes, stand in the median, look to your right, wait for a gap in traffic, and cross these 2 lanes when it's safe to cross. But you're not looking left and right and trying to get a gap in 4 or 6 lanes of traffic at a time.
Right, but those intersections have hawk lights. So you push the button, you wait for the light to tell you to go across, and you go across. And I understand, yes, there may be a distracted driver, but you still have that opportunity to get across the street. Now you're telling me I gotta look left and hope that when I'm pushing my shopping carriage or my baby carriage, that I'm fast enough to get across the street. Right?
Yeah, we have some slides and some video that may help further reinforce, my response to that. Go ahead, Mark, why don't you?
Yeah, sure. This is a great question because, we have what we think is a safe situation. What we know about traffic signals, I push a button, I wait, I go. But what we fail to realize is that there's a hidden risk with signals that the pedestrian doesn't realize. And that's, if you look at this image, you've got the source of traffic from several different directions. I actually used this slide in Franklin, Tennessee a few weeks ago because they want to convert this signalized intersection to a roundabout with about that size. They're not true in scale. This roundabout's a little smaller than this, and this should be bigger by comparison. But the point of the slide is to show that in the area where pedestrians are at risk, the source of traffic is in 3 directions, not 1. And the speed of traffic from those directions is as much as 40 miles per hour or as low as 20 or 25. We're all familiar with the right turn on red. So even when the pedestrian pushes the button and feels that they're safe in the crosswalk, the right turn on red is still a real risk. The problem is the pedestrian doesn't perceive it to be, because we all think that the walk symbol says I have the right of way to go, but you only have the right of way if someone gives it to you in the sense of a left turn, a right turn, and of course if someone fails the red, it's catastrophic. In the case of the roundabout, your sense of safety matches your real safety. You don't really feel that safe in a roundabout crosswalk, so it's what you see is what you get. But what we know by comparison, that about there's a pedestrian crash, for every 10 traffic signals, there's approximately 1 pedestrian crash per year. For roundabouts, we have 4,000 or 5,000 in the United States now, and we can't count the number of pedestrian crashes. We don't have a statistic. It's less than 25 crashes with pedestrians in the last several years. There's been 1 fatal, but that's again with several 1,000 roundabouts in the United States. So what we're seeing is the evidence is telling us that pedestrians aren't as at great a risk at roundabouts, and we know that to be the case with signals, that they are at great risk. I think if you pop back one, yeah, well, I'm not too proud of this, but what we've worked with communities to do is to try and get them to help pedestrians understand how to be assertive in the crosswalk. They're not there to stop traffic. They're there to signal their way. And so I saw that driver coming. I put my hand up. You know where we got this? This isn't a roundabout specific idea. We got this from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And on their website in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, for older pedestrians crossing at traffic signals, they advise them to put their hand up to indicate to traffic when drivers are making right turns that they're in the crosswalk and the walk symbol is up. And so they're that much at risk in communities like Fort Lauderdale. And we said, well, that's not a hard thing to do. We can get pedestrians to point and walk. So if you go to the next slide, okay, let's clip that one. So this is always a big test. What's going to happen if I put a roundabout near a school? And again, about 10 years ago, we stopped collecting data because the answer kept coming back solid from the parents, the administrators, the school bus drivers. So this one happens to be a middle school, lots of young kids. But if you look closely, there's a child here. He's just dropped his books. Now, if that was a traffic signal, it's about to change. The books are going to get run over, or unless the drivers were to stop. Now, because speeds are low and the child's given the right-of-way, this is the epitome, this is the optimal way to see pedestrians get the right-of-way and get preference over other traffic. Sure, it's congested, but this child is not at risk by comparison to traffic signals. So when we started collecting evidence like this 10, 15 years ago, it kept coming back positive, and schools really are attracted to the use of roundabouts at their main driveways. Even high schools with young novice drivers are finding it very attractive to use roundabouts. So we're seeing this kind of evidence with the pedestrian question, but it tends to be counterintuitive. We think we're at risk when in fact, our perception of safety matches the real safety afforded to the pedestrian.
Members have questions. Yes, Alderman DeLucia.
So, my question goes beyond this project. So from Asylum Street, have you considered what you might do from Asylum Street, the first roundabout on the east end, all the way down to where the fire station is, where High Street comes in, down there where the road splits?
We have not. That's for another day. Let's focus on this and see if we can get this done.
But that begs the question, if it's 2 lanes coming around the intersection at Asylum, you're opening back up to 4 lanes?
Yep. So the existing condition there with all the traffic signals, that's going to remain in place. This is not going to adversely affect that in any way. The operations that are at those existing signals, that's going to continue. That would be a project for another day. There's only so much we can handle under one project.
Well, so my personal preference would be from that first roundabout on the east end of Asylum Street, that the road be divided all the way down to the bottom of the hill, because you've got, that's one of the most, right there, that 4-lane stretch where Ann Street is, where Firestone is, where that shopping center, where Dairy Queen is. You got the car service place there on the right-hand side. I believe it's called Computech, right? There's people making those left-hand turns on that downhill curve, right? That's just as dangerous as the left-hand turns pretty much anywhere else on that stretch.
I'm going to suggest tonight, if that is the opinion and decision of the council, that they would like to have DOT investigate that, send DOT a letter that that's what you would like investigated. A raised median and extended through that section.
Just one of the things, so you did looks like a fairly extensive statistical analysis regarding the amount of accidents at at each individual intersection from the looks of it. Did you consider the phase-in of the project in a sense that we were addressing the most severe needs from that aspect of it first, rather than saying 1, 2, 3 in a row there and 1, 2, 3 in a row there?
I went about it a different way, and my intent on building the east end first are because these are single lane roundabouts, and I'm looking at this for safety post-construction. And it's going to be easier for drivers in this area that are not familiar with roundabouts to get exposure to the single lanes first, get comfortable with the single lanes first, learn how to navigate them, learn how to pedestrians to cross them, and then we'll build the double lanes. That was the reasoning for the project phasing.
At least there's some reasoning.
Makes sense. Other members? Yes, Alderwoman Gould.
Okay, so other than the businesses, maybe a dozen or so businesses that need to relocate, how much other private land does the state need to acquire to implement your plan for the 6 roundabouts?
You want square footage, something like that?
I mean, are we talking about every business has to give up 2 feet, 5 feet, 22 feet?
So it's actually shown on this plan. And we have a red line. I'm going to put my laser pointer on the red line. It's something like this. Basically behind the sidewalk here, right up to the sidewalk. We're using the existing right-of-way here. This side, a little bit of frontage along these properties. And I think that your question needs a closer review of the plan to be able to see the lines. Otherwise, my reporting square footages to you, it's probably not going to have a meaningful answer to your question.
Right, so do you plan on do you have a handout of this that
I do not
we can
have
get,
anything
or-
with me tonight, but we've been having discussions pretty regularly with Public Works, and I certainly, they've got a copy of the plan. This is very similar to what was presented in 2015. There aren't any significant changes, especially with the right-of-way line, and I'd be happy to share that with the council too. I can email that to Mayor Nystrom.
Alderman Nash.
I only have one question, because I'm not a designer, so I don't know what I'm talking about, but I'm just going to ask. When you're at this EGP Four Corners where the fire department is in the second phase, you literally have one roundabout in a very large intersection, and then you're going to slide down to another smaller intersection, which is like, I don't know, maybe a few hundred feet from the last one. I did notice in phase 2, or phase 1, you took some of the parking lot out of a development, the plaza there.
This one?
No, one up more, the next one up.
This one?
There.
Yep.
So what's the majority that you showed the video of the traffic issue going into that plaza where the ShopRite and the TJ Maxx and stuff, the next one over?
This is ShopRite
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, that's Norman Road.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, why not move it down to the next, move to the next part, yeah, right there.
Oh,
Why can't you
put
just
the roundabout
Put it
here?
right there instead.
Because this is where most of the traffic's coming through. This is a town road, and this is just a driveway to the plaza.
Right.
So
But
there's a lot
That's where
more.
you seem to have a lot of problems on the video.
Yep, and those problems will be eliminated by the raised median here, because all the turns out of the plaza are gonna be a right turn. You're gonna turn right and continue east, or going to the roundabout and circulate back.
Or come out the
Or
road.
you could
So-
come out, if you leave the plaza, you could come out Norman
I just-
Road, enter the roundabout, and that's your left.
Alright.
If you wanna turn into the plaza, and you're coming westbound, which was the same place I showed the video. So in the video, I showed the car sitting
Yep,
here, he's
yep.
waiting to make a left. So he's got 2 options. He doesn't sit here to make a left. He continues the roundabout. He can either do a U-turn and make a right turn in, or he can go around the roundabout down Norman Road and turn into the plaza that way. But the car is never sitting here, and he's never backing up through traffic in this lane, basically blocking the lane.
What's up, Bill? Yeah. Go ahead, Alderman Delusha.
Thank you. So, taking that from the other direction, so, because, like Alderwoman Miles, I live right over there, and And there are many times where you can barely get through the EGP four corners before you get stopped again at Norman Road, and you have 2 lanes of traffic in each direction backed up between those 2 intersections. So, yeah, I totally get it. And it's, you know, people trying to make a left turn into Wendy's, trying to make a left turn on and off Norman Road, the thing's a nightmare more often than not, you know, so.
And I had mentioned at the previous council meeting, and this is still something we're investigating, the highest pedestrian crossing location on the corridor that I've observed in the most area of significant concern is around ShopRite. And there's 2 bus stops here with bus shelters, with a heavy pedestrian crossing here and a heavy pedestrian crossing here. A lot of them are using public transportation, or else they're accessing the apartments down behind ShopRite. We have another tool available to us. It's called the pedestrian hybrid beacon, would be a mid-block crossing. And that's not something we've decided on yet, but it's a consideration because of the heavy crossings here. If we were to do that, this crosswalk probably wouldn't be placed here. We'd probably be doing something closer to where the bus shelter is and located there. But that's something, you know, we're not there yet.
Alderman Miles.
Just a question. So with this plan with the roundabouts, where would you locate, or how would the public transit work so that it's not stopping the flow of traffic?
It would be in the lane. So through here, you still have the 2-lane section. These are where the bus shelters are. So the bus would stop in the rightmost lane, and then traffic would go around on the left. In the single-lane section, these are designed wide enough so that a vehicle could pass the bus. You may have traffic queued up behind the bus for a short time, depending on how the bus parks, but it would be a very short time. I mean, how long does the bus stop? A few seconds. It's not like it's there for a minute. It's not the same kind of delay you experience at a traffic signal. He stops, somebody gets on, he goes, and it's only maybe once an hour at the most. There's not that many stops out here.
The posted speed limit through this, when this went from 2 to 4 lanes, they added 10 miles at each change. And it was already 11 miles over the posted speed limit then, and the result was complete. It went 11 miles even faster than the new posted speed limit. You're going to be dropping the posted speed limit down?
We are not yet with the corridor. And
Okay.
that's, you know, I'm letting you know the design speed, and the design speed is based on the geometric conditions that we have. You can't physically drive one of these roundabouts at 40 miles an hour.
No.
Your vehicle won't make it through. The geometry is just too tight. So by controlling the geometry limits how fast you can physically drive through there.
So you're going to determine that once you,
Yep.
okay.
Yep, and if reducing the speed limit is something that the council would like to see happen along with this project, along with the other letter you send me, I'd like you to address that with your legal traffic authority, because that's who DOT typically works with in reducing the speed limit, and that's something that we can take up with our state traffic division while we're designing the project.
The roundabouts, they can be navigated by fire apparatus?
Absolutely,
How about tractor-trailer?
absolutely.
Because that was an issue for the ShopRite Plaza and the Conover, which manages it. They were concerned that they wouldn't be able to get the trucks back to the highway once they made the deliveries. These will be designed to accommodate those.
They will be, and you know, something I was having a conversation with Mark before the meeting starts is that we design in context of the community, context of the shopping center, the development all around. And some of you may have been places where you've seen a local neighborhood roundabout. Windsor, Connecticut has several. There's a lot of towns in Connecticut that have neighborhood roundabouts. Someone put them in on a city street for traffic calming. They removed the 4-way stop control. They put a small circle in the middle. Glastonbury was one of the most recent towns to install one of these small roundabouts. And when I say in context, if you look at Glastonbury, it's a very narrow roadway. You have business development very close to the street. You have restaurants that are basically, they have seating right behind the sidewalk. And you're not trying to accommodate large vehicles through there. And they intentionally did that to make that section of their community walkable. That's what they were going for. Walkable community, have people park their cars, walk to go to the restaurants, walk to go shopping. That's the business environment they wanted. That's not what we have in your community. In your community, we have a state arterial roadway. People are trying to go from A to B and also go shopping. The speeds need to be a little higher. The roundabout design in Glastonbury, those diameters are less than 100 feet. What we're proposing in your community, our average diameter is 150 feet on average. So just to give you a sense of how much bigger they are than the ones in Glastonbury. Anyone familiar with what we built in Salem? If you have that as kind of the idea in your head, that's more like what we're talking about here. There's design for WB62. This is a trailer you might see on I-395. These are trailers you currently have on your roadway. The roundabouts we're proposing on Route 82, that truck can make a U-turn. And the intent is, we know they make deliveries to a lot of the businesses on the corridor. They have to make a U-turn because in order to go down to the intersection and then come back to the business, they got to do a U-turn. So that will handle fire trucks, ambulances, large tractor trailers.
We have about 25 minutes left. I'd like to give an opportunity. There are many people here today. I see a number of property owners here. First, if you have any concerns after what you've heard today, if you want to put it in writing, I'll make sure it's distributed to everyone on the council. We'll take that information going forward. But is there anyone here who would like to address the people from DOT right here, right now? If you have a specific concern, if you're a property owner on the corridor, I'd like to start there. Or someone who manages a property. Yes. If you'd use the microphone, please, that way we have a record. Thank you.
Michael Rao from Chelsea Groton Bank. We're a property owner and have a number of customers along the corridor. So thank you for hosting this, and thank you guys for coming here. I guess I have two broad categories of concern. One is we were told about a year or so ago in a visit that we were likely to lose 4 parking spaces. I don't see that on your picture as significant impact. That's about 25% of the parking spaces that we have, and I consider that to be a significant impact. We haven't heard anything again since then, so I'm looking forward to seeing the next phase. On a broader scale, don't take this the wrong way, but I think you were a little bit dismissive of forcing, I was trying to count them as you showed that, forcing at least 9 businesses out of this corridor. Many of those are our customers, and I don't think we as a community should be taking the relocation of 9 businesses lightly. And I think you're diminishing the impact of all of us along this corridor over this 4-year period, because people will, I know you're only working in one section at a time, we draw customers from all over the city, and people will avoid a place that is difficult to navigate for 4 years. I saw it in downtown Mystic, I saw it in Salem, I saw it in Glastonbury. I think it's disingenuous to dismiss the concerns of the business community of the design of this and of the construction process. And I hope you'll take that into consideration. Thank you.
So in response to your question, we do have those parking spaces shown on the plan. Because of the length of the corridor, in order to have the detail that you're looking for on the plan, I would have had to have a dozen screenshots along the corridor to have that big of a plan. Here's Chelsea Groton Bank. This red line on the corner represents those 4 parking spaces.
That's 25% of our customer parking.
And we did reach out to Chelsea Groton Bank last summer, and I mentioned we've been meeting with everyone along the corridor. We work with your bank manager. We had a meeting, I'm going to say, with at least 3 managers that day. Why they didn't invite you, I apologize for that, but we did reach out. We asked who best to work with.
And they told me what you were going to tell them. So I'm saying for losing 25% of our parking spaces is a significant impact.
So also what we discussed that day was maybe changes to traffic circulation within the parking lot that could help. The bank manager at the time had some ideas they were looking to implement that we said we could probably do that with the project, and we're certainly willing to continue working with you. As far as interruptions during construction, we recognize there's a need. There's a safety improvement, there's poor operations. Any type of construction you do, whether it's on a building, parking lot, or roadway, there's some disruption for a short time that we have to get through to get to the final product. And unfortunately, there's just no way to have this done overnight. I don't have an answer to your question. I understand your concern, but there's no solution to that. In order to address the safety, the capacity, the needs we have, construction is necessary. The only other option is to leave it as is and walk away. But as far as impacts to your particular property, parking, the sign, possible changes to traffic circulation, which the bank manager we spoke with at the time had concerns about pedestrians in front of the building, and we suggested we could work with her maybe during construction to make some signing and marking changes that would help with that. If you'd like to speak with me more, come see me after the meeting. I'll give you my card. We can meet on site and talk.
Other property people that are here who want to express concerns? I'll open it up to others then. Go ahead. Tucker, please come to the microphone now.
Hello, thank you. My name is Tucker Braddock. I live in Norwich, and I'm involved in our city. It's a great place. And I do think that the roundabouts is a way to have people going from east to west or west to east without stopping, and it does eliminate a lot of frustration that people go through. One of my main concerns is that, and watching this in the past, I know that construction is going to be troublesome on that road. And people will naturally avoid that road. And if they change their habits and go to another market or go to another place, the possibility of that person coming back is not really strong. And I'd like to know if the DOT has some kind of connectivity with the DECD, that if and when these businesses are interrupted, that there's some financing available to help these people get over that crisis. Because it will be a crisis. If you're talking one section at a time, at least what I think you're talking, there's going to be a disruption on that whole corridor. I know that it's important to have things like this done. I question 6 in a mile and a quarter. That seems like a $60 million bill. I'm wondering if that's is in the state's best interest or in our best interest. But that's my concern, is that there's some state agency there that will help these businesses get through that crisis that they will be going through.
We do not have that.
You do not have that.
The state does not have an avenue to pay for loss of revenue during construction.
That this is a community that struggles from day to day with business. We're trying to bring business into our area. If you're talking about displacing 5 or 6, 7 businesses, and then not supporting the ones we have here, that's a pretty troubling event for Norwich. That's a very important tax asset for us, that whole corridor. And I know what you're trying to do is to cut down on the accidents. That's great. But this is still a very important tax asset for this community.
So a two-part response to your question. And during construction, we don't have a mechanism to pay for loss of business. We just don't have that ability to do that. There's no laws or statutes in Connecticut or through the federal government that allow us to make those payments. So there is some difficulty during construction in getting this done. But we tried to communicate is looking long-term, with all the projects that Mark presented, we showed that other corridors had been really successful after the roundabouts were done. It tends to be an area that businesses want to be.
And I agree, excuse me, I agree with you. The demographic you showed to us was in Florida, it was in Arizona, it was in Avon, Connecticut. That's not Norwich, Connecticut.
So on a local level, what we've experienced, and I mentioned when we started this, we built 7 roundabouts on state arterial roadways. I've been in design, I have been responsible for design of 6 of them. Of the 6 we've done, a lot of folks here are familiar with Salem Four Corners and what that was like previously. Immediately upon completion of construction of the roundabout, Dunkin' Donuts went in. There wasn't a Dunkin' Donuts there before, and Dunkin' Donuts is doing real well. That entire strip mall that has plum tomatoes, great food, everybody probably loves it. Before we started construction, there was on a regular basis 2 or 3 units in that plaza that were empty. I know, I worked with that landowner for years on the development of the project. You don't see those units empty anymore. They're all doing very well. They're very successful businesses. Across the street, we had Salem Prime Cuts as part of the project. We relocated their driveway. They're doing better now. I mean, it's a very vibrant business. The Henny Penny gas station, they're still there. They're doing very well. Another site I did in Ellington, Connecticut, it was 5 Corners. Immediately upon construction, one of the property owners that owned the gas station, he bought the adjacent properties next to him. He put in a Dunkin' Donuts. The first roundabout I worked on in West Haven, Connecticut, had kind of a 50, 60, 75-year-old dilapidated filling station with a Coke machine inside. We took some parking from him. He was very angry with me during the design process. As soon as we completed the construction, he sold his property. Store came in called 3 Wheels. It's very similar to a Cumberland Farms. He made out very well. They rebuilt the whole property, put in new gas pumps. They built a coffee shop, donut shop, and a big convenience store. Restaurant on the other side of the intersection was redeveloped, very profitable. An additional restaurant went in next to them. You know, these are local experiences in Connecticut, but it's after construction. You know, and I recognize there is some difficulty during construction, and I can make a commitment to you that we'll break this up in phases. We'll try not to work on the entire roadway at one time. And the traffic impacts, we'll try to be working at one location, so traffic up here isn't impacted, you know, here, here, and here all on the same day.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Anyone else like to raise an issue? Yes, sir, please.
Not much for public speaking, but here goes. I own, my name's David McDowell. I own Sign Professionals on the corner of Asylum and West Main. And I will be, I got a kick that they went through it real quick with who's going to be affected, and I am going to be wiped out. A business I spent 30 years building with the idea that I would rent my building to whoever bought my business, and that would be my retirement. All right, it's gone. Understand when the state says that they'll come in and help, they will after the fact. So, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, we've had great discussions, and you're a nice guy. But the fact of the matter is, they will come in, and they will say, we're taking your business on X day. Go find someplace else, we'll try to help you. But I have to come up with the money for that. I have to come up with the money to move all my equipment. I have to deal with the lost business while I'm moving the equipment. I have to deal with the lost income while I'm moving my business. I'm 53 years old. My greatest thing that I ever did, other than marrying my wife, was moving my business from Marlborough, Connecticut to Norwich. It has been exemplary. The public utilities, the police department, the fire department, I couldn't be happier on the corner I am, and there's not a spot you're gonna find me in this town that's gonna give me more exposure than I have right there. My business is better than it's ever been since I started in my basement 25 or 30 years ago. My business partner and I, we've been busting our chops 60 hours a week, 70 hours a week for the last 30 years. Worked 2 jobs when we started this, okay? Everything's gone. I don't have a state pension. I don't have a retirement. This is it. This is what I built. I spent my entire life building this, as did he. We have 2 full-time employees. In the summertime, we hire college kids, high school kids to come in and work for us. All of that will be gone. I can't imagine that I'm gonna be able to move and then recoup that income, that lost income, because they're not gonna give you any, right? You lose, you know, And the best they're gonna give me on the building is fair market value. And that could be argued a little bit here and there, but the fact of the matter is, they're gonna give me fair market value. I bought the building, I leased the building for years. I bought the building about 5 years ago. By the time they come in and buy my building, I will have just gotten over the interest, right? How much am I really gonna make on that? So I'm not walking away with a pocket full of money, right? And any cost of moving, I have to come up with. And then if they see fit to reimburse me for that cost, I get reimbursed. So, and we've had great discussions, and you were heartfelt and you were sorry, and I understand that, but I want the board to know, and I don't know if the other businesses that are in here are gonna get up and speak, but, you know, I'm not some big corporation that can, you know, absorb this, right? This is gonna cost me, this is gonna ruin me. Because at 53, if they're talking about doing this in 2 or 3 years, I'm gonna be, you know, 55 years old, right? I'm a grandfather. I wanna start hanging out with my kids and start letting the guys that work for me take over my shop. I'd like to go golfing someday. You know what I mean? I'd like to take more than a 4-day vacation on a long weekend because I work so much I can't. All right, so I'm getting to that point. This is all stuff I've worked for, and with this project, you know, whether you deem it's necessary, unnecessary, that's for you guys to decide, but I'm done. Like, and where are they gonna put me, right? All my customers are gonna have to try to find me again, so I don't wanna beat a dead horse, but I want, and I was glad for your question. I was gonna slip you my card afterwards, but
Okay.
I'm glad for your question because,
I've been to the store. So.
yeah, and we're gonna be affected, and I just wanna put a face to that, because, it's gonna be 30 years that I spent by the time this is done, and it's gonna be 30 years that I'm not sure why I did it, because this is gonna wreck me, and the state really is gonna give you nothing. I mean, at the end of the day, they give you a pamphlet and they tell you to look at it, but I don't see the help. And it's all, you know, this started, what, 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
5 years ago.
5 years, and, you know, do I fix my roof or do I not fix my roof? Do I change those windows? Do I redo the siding? Do I do this? Do I do that? I don't know if it's gonna happen today, tomorrow, next week. You know, so it's very hard to plan and build a business with this light over your head. You know what I mean? I could have expanded my business and done other things. We were talking about building it up and doing a garage and stuff, but if they're gonna just knock it down, what's the point? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Nystrom, I have someone from the department's right-of-way office with us,
Okay.
and I'd like to have an opportunity to at least comment on how the DOT relocation process works in acquisitions.
Please. Yep, please, if you would state your name and at the microphone, that we have a public record, and then we'll get right to you, sir, if I could, please. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dennis McDonald, and I am a representative from the Connecticut Department of Transportation Division of Rights-of-Way. Just to kind of go over a little bit about the rights-of-way process. So it is true, we do offer fair market value for the purchase of a property. It's based on an appraisal. There is a negotiation period. Now, when it comes to a relocation of a business, we interview each business owner, and we try and assess their needs. There are relocation benefits available to businesses, inclusive of moving expenses. Now, it is a reimbursement program. However, we understand that businesses cannot often afford the upfront cost, so we will pay moving contractors directly. It doesn't have to come out of a business owner's pocket, but we refer to it as a reimbursement program. There's also reestablishment expenses, which are used to assist businesses in reestablishing a new location, and we do help businesses the best we can with the information we gather from them, attempt to find a replacement location. Now, we absolutely understand, and I can't imagine what a business owner has to go through when they find out that their business has to be or is being purchased by the state. But we do our best with the restrictions that we have as far as the federal regulations, and we make every effort to make it a successful business relocation.
Thank you. Sir, please.
My name is Peter Grader. We own Grader Jewelers in Norwich here, and it is my understanding that we would lose our business due to the current plan for the widening of the road. And it is simply a very sad day after some 50 years of coming to Norwich, building a business, to see it all to go down the tube. I just question, what is the wisdom to make a highway wider to go where to? From a city that was once a thriving city full of promise. You people run the city. You should have the answer. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We've got 5 minutes left before our meeting. Yes, sir. Hello, Brian.
Thank you, Mayor. Brian Kobolars, Hobart Avenue here in Norwich. Want to wind back the clock for a moment. 16 years ago, this time of year, I was chairing the Downtown NRZ. We partnered in the redevelopment agency, Rose City Renaissance, downtown business owners, and a lot of other stakeholders that had a part in the community. We, at that time, Dave Burnett was the first person that brought up the idea of roundabouts here in the city. And we had them placed in downtown and right at the entry point to downtown. Some of these ideas went up to DOT. I brought up the person's name earlier, who he said retired. City manager, assistant city manager brought it up there. It's supposed to be under consideration. I want to align myself with the question that Joe asked earlier about why doesn't this connect with the downtown? Because you end up jamming everything right there at Asylum Street, and you're missing that link, which is part of this travel corridor that everybody is using to go to Misquamica, to go to the casinos, to enhance and build on the downtown businesses and the revitalization that has been taking place there. That is a prime concern. When you're ending up affecting the tax base with these businesses, and by the way, that proposal on what you do with relocation, I hope that there is a priority that the relocation takes place within the same taxing district, the city, as where they're being relocated from. We saw a fire take place on 82, and some of that business has gone to neighboring communities. We would like to see it maintained here. So turn that into a priority should this go forward. Turn it into a priority to link the downtown and the revitalization there with this project. Otherwise, you're going to create one problem after another downstream. Address it all at once. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to have to bring this to a close. I would state for the record that the concepts and issues that members of council have raised, as well as the public, will be drafted into a letter. The letter will be sent to you as soon as possible. And I would invite people who maybe did not speak tonight, if you have concerns, don't hesitate to call the office down here. Reach out to members of council. We will accept your information. We will continue to pass it on throughout this process. We're probably still, what, at least three years, maybe four, before the beginning. Yep. And there will be a request for further updates as we move forward during that. You will be coming back at a 30% design?
We typically we've been working with Pat pretty regularly. Every few months we have a conversation, maybe a quick review. Our process is once we get to 30%, we have an internal municipality meeting. We talk about scheduling a public information meeting. There may be additional Chamber of Commerce meetings. Absolutely, we're going to be back.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much for coming down, sharing the information. Thank you all for coming.